Every empire says its money is safe. Every government promises its word will last forever. And every single time history proves them wrong, from Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon. People woke up one morning and found everything gone, savings worthless, salaries meaningless, futures stolen by the very systems they thought were unbreakable. Collapse isn't rare. Collapse is the rule. The real question was never whether financial systems fail. It's what you do when they do. And here's the part. Most people never stop to consider. The illusion of permanence is the most dangerous financial mistake you can make. We look at our bank accounts and assume they're solid ground, but money isn't solid ground. Money is trust. And trust can disappear overnight. That's what makes history both brutal and invaluable. Every collapse leaves something behind, patterns, warnings, a trail of lessons about what actually holds value and what simply turns to dust. And if you look closely enough, you'll see it. The people who survived these disasters weren't the ones who trusted the most. They were the ones who started doubting first. Take the Byzantine Empire. 1,000 years after Western Rome collapsed, Eastern Rome was still standing. At the center of its economy was a single gold coin, the solidus. It was so trusted that merchants from Europe to the Middle East to Asia accepted it without hesitation. For centuries, it was the closest thing the medieval world had to a global reserve currency. Now here's where it gets interesting. We know what Rome did to the silver denarius. Emperors kept shaving it down, mixing in cheaper metals, until what started as silver was basically tin with a silver coat. Did Byzantium learn from that? No. Centuries later, they made the exact same mistake, only this time with gold. They started cutting the purity, stretching it thinner, mixing in cheaper alloys. At first, nobody noticed. Then trust cracked. The coin that had anchored Mediterranean trade for generations became political fiction. So what actually survived? Not decrees, not paper promises. The merchants who had quietly been stacking real gold and land far beyond the empire's reach watched everyone else's wealth evaporate and kept their own. That's the first timeless lesson. Governments cannot resist the urge to dilute their money, and when they do, real value runs to the one place they can't reach, assets they cannot counterfeit. But not every collapse starts with rulers playing games with currency. Sometimes the shock comes from nowhere. In the middle of the 14th century, Europe was hit by the deadliest pandemic in its history, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half of all Europeans died. Cities emptied, villages vanished, trade collapsed. But here's what most people don't realize. The economic story of the plague isn't just a story of devastation. When half the workforce disappears, labor becomes precious. Survivors could demand wages that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Land that was once expensive became abundant because there weren't enough people left to work it. Families with silver, with goods, with simply the ability to work suddenly had leverage they'd never dreamed of. Land that once cost a fortune, available for a fraction, houses empty, fields unplowed. It was a buyer's market. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, it should. Because we lived a modern version of this during COVID, supply chains broke down. Governments printed trillions. And while those with liquidity bought up assets, the people living paycheck to paycheck fell further and further behind. In the U.S., housing prices exploded. Markets recovered almost instantly. And millions of ordinary people were just trying to cover rent. This isn't complicated. Pandemics redistribute wealth. They always have. The survivors of the Black Death used scarcity to climb. The people who came out of COVID with liquid assets walked away with properties, stocks, and businesses that others couldn't hold on to anymore. The lesson isn't comfortable, but it's true. Crises reward those with reserves, and they punish everyone else. But what about institutions? Pandemics strike from the outside. Florence showed us what collapse looks like from within. In the 1340s, Florence was the financial capital of Europe. The Bardi and Peruzzi families were lending money to kings, the fatal mistake. Enormous loans to Edward III of England. When Edward went to war with France, he stopped paying. The banks collapsed. Depositors lost everything. Trade froze. One of the most powerful cities in Europe was thrown into chaos. And here's the part that gets overlooked. Size is not safety. The Bardi family was too big to fail until it failed. This lesson shows up in every century. Florence in the 1340s, Lehman Brothers in 2008, Lebanese banks freezing accounts in 2019. Institutions don't exist to protect you. They exist to make money. And when they go down, they take your savings with them. But here's what history keeps showing us. Economic collapse isn't something that only happens to distant places. Behind the American Civil War was a financial battle most Americans today know almost nothing about. Both the Union and the Confederacy discovered quickly that a war of that scale meant printing money. In the North, they issued greenbacks, paper currency backed not by gold, but by the promise of the United States itself. At first it seemed bold, almost heroic. But the more they printed, the less it bought. In the South, it was far worse. The Confederacy printed in staggering quantities. By the end of the war, inflation had reached levels that are almost hard to picture. Prices multiplied hundreds of times over. A soldier's pay was worthless before he could even spend it. Families carried bags of bills that couldn't buy a loaf of bread. By 1865, Confederate currency wasn't just weak, it was dead. What held value through all of it? Not paper, land, food, gold, anything real. For those with access to hard assets, the war was a chance to acquire property for almost nothing. Your own country has already lived through a currency collapse. And when it happened, the people who survived weren't the ones holding paper. They were the ones holding things the system couldn't inflate away. France learned the same lesson, even faster. In the 1790s, revolutionaries seized church lands and launched a new paper currency, the assignat, backed in theory by the value of confiscated property. In practice, they just kept printing. Each new issue diluted the last. Prices spiraled. Wages fell behind. The assignat became worthless. Farmers refused to sell food for paper. Bread riots returned to Paris. The revolution consumed itself. And here's the hard truth underneath all of it. A promise is only worth what people believe it's worth. When that belief breaks, savings don't just shrink, they vanish. Fast forward 2 centuries, 1997, Thailand. What started as a speculative attack on a single currency turned into a regional catastrophe. Thailand had borrowed heavily in dollars, confident its currency peg would hold. It didn't. Overnight, debts that were manageable became unpayable. Investors fled. Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea all fell in a chain reaction. Economies shrank. Unemployment surged. Governments went begging to the IMF. The people who suffered most weren't the hedge funds that started the panic. It was ordinary people. Savings wiped out. Mortgages doubled overnight. Jobs gone. The ones who held dollars or assets abroad survived, as they always do. While debt-dependent nations were forced into brutal austerity, Wall Street walked in and bought Asian assets at fire sale prices. What looked like a local crisis was actually a global transfer of wealth. The lesson is simple. Borrowing in someone else's currency is a trap. When the storm hits, it's not the creditor who drowns, it's the debtor. By now, the picture should be coming into focus. But here's the part of history that should really wake you up. Collapse isn't ancient. It isn't distant. It's happening right now. In Lebanon, between 2019 and 2021, banks did something most people in the developed world still can't believe. They locked the doors. People woke up and found their deposits frozen, withdrawals blocked, and their currency in free fall. The Lebanese pound lost over 90% of its value. A lifetime of savings became pocket change. People lined up outside banks begging for access to their own money, not just small savers, middle-class families, retirees, doctors, and engineers. Anyone who had trusted the system wiped out. Stop and really sit with this. The money in your bank isn't a treasure chest. It's a loan you've made to an institution that can decide in a crisis not to pay you back. Still feel far away. In 2008, Americans watched their homes get repossessed while the banks that caused the crisis were bailed out. In 2020, trillions were printed. Asset prices soared for the wealthy. Ordinary wages barely moved. In 2023, regional banks in the United States collapsed almost overnight, reminding everyone that too big to fail is a story we tell ourselves until the day the doors close. So what do you actually do? History doesn't give one answer. It gives several. In Byzantium, gold. After the Black Death, liquidity. In Florence, don't trust institutions just because they're large. In the Confederacy, hard assets. In France, property and food. In Asia, avoid debt in someone else's currency. In Lebanon, get out before the system shuts you out. The patterns shift, but the theme never does. Survival doesn't come from blind trust. It comes from seeing clearly before the illusion falls apart. And here's where it gets truly interesting. Collapse is both a tragedy and an opportunity. For the unprepared, it's devastation. For those who are ready, it's the moment wealth moves at the lowest price it will ever be. After the Black Death, peasants became landowners. After 2008, the people who held cash bought homes while millions were being foreclosed. Protection isn't only about defense. It's about knowing exactly when to move, when others have no choice but to let go. But wealth isn't only about what you own. It's about what you can do. The survivors throughout history weren't just the ones with gold. They were the ones who could create value when no one else could. The baker still making bread, the craftsman still repairing tools, the farmer who could still feed a community, the merchant who could still move goods across a border. They didn't just survive the collapse, they rose through it. In every crisis, money loses meaning. But production never does. People still need to eat, to build, to trade, to live. And those who can meet those needs are never poor for long. That's the real protection, real assets, real skills, and the clear-eyed understanding that illusions always, eventually, collapse. Every crisis is a transfer, from those who trusted to those who prepared, from paper promises to real value, from passive savers to active builders. The question was never whether everything falls apart. It always does. The question is, will you be one of the many left holding promises or one of the few holding something real? History doesn't repeat itself, but ignore it and it will crush you all the same. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe. History is filled with answers, waiting to be discovered. I'll show you where to start looking.